5.7, and we're going to be learning to factor a trinomial that has this form. The B and the C are just placeholders for a number value, could be a positive or negative number. All right, just to get us started, want to think about what the big idea is, and the main idea here is that factoring is really the reverse of multiplying. And so to demonstrate that, here's a multiplication problem, and you might have used the box method or the distributive property. I'm going to use the distributive property to demonstrate this. So I'm going to multiply each of the terms on the right, the binomial on the right, by the term x. So x times both of these, and then I'm going to take the 2 and multiply both of those as well. So there's a total of 4 multiplications. So x times x is x squared, and then the second multiplication is on the outer terms, x times negative 5, negative 5x. 2 times x, multiplying the inner terms, and then multiplying the right terms, positive 2 times negative 5 gives us negative 10. So there's my 4 terms, and I have 2 terms that are alike, so I will combine them, and this is negative 5 plus 2 will give me negative 3x. So the final answer is x squared minus 3x minus 10. So the product of these two binomials gave me a trinomial. Here's the goal that we're looking for. We're going to reverse that. So this direction, when we're right here, we're multiplying. Today we're going to learn to go the other direction. I'm going to give you the polynomial and then put it into this form. So this is called factoring. All right, so that's the main idea. We're going to go backwards. We're reversing directions. So I'm going to share with you my method. There are so many methods to doing this. I call my method the smiling man method. Let me draw a line. So we'll put the big idea on top. Smiling man method. I call it that because essentially what I'm going to do is take these arcs that I've drawn and then reorganize them. There's 4 arcs here in such a way that I get the image of a smiling man using the parentheses and these little arcs. So it looks like this. Okay, so here are the 2 binomials. I'll just put nothing in it. Okay, so imagine that these are like the eyes. And perhaps. And so inside there'll be 2 binomials. So these are the first 2 terms, like here it's x plus 2. So plus or minus goes inside here. I don't know, this is a notation that just means it's either adding or subtracting. And then we do the same thing in this one. So first term, we're going to add or subtract the second term. Okay, so I'm just putting these lines here as placeholders. All right, and so here's the smiling man. Okay, I'm going to connect the first terms with an arc on the top. So that means that I'm multiplying those 2 positions together. And then I'm going to connect the last terms with an arc. So I'll be multiplying those 2 together. And then the last 2 multiplications are the inner terms, so I'll put those on the bottom. That's my smile for my smiling man, multiplying these 2 positions together. And then finally, my chin of my smiling man, it's a multiplication of these outer terms. So the inner terms, the outer terms, the first terms, and the last terms. You've heard of that as FOIL. This is like a reverse FOIL method. Can you see the smiling man in the image? Okay, I just think it looks comical, makes me smile when I do it, so I don't feel so bad about factoring, and then you get really good at it. So you got to start with some positive vibes. All right, so it's going to look like this. So let's get started with our first examples. Okay, A. I have 3 examples total. And the first one is we're going to, oh, and the directions will be for all 3 of these, we're going to factor. And that's it. We stop as soon as we get a factored form. All right, polynomial x squared plus 10x plus 16. All right, now do recall to do the smiling man method, remember that these positions that we're going to try and figure out what to fill in them. That's our goals. We have to figure out what to put in these 4 positions. All right, so but where do they come from? All right, if you think backwards, if I'm going to start with a polynomial like this one, where did this x squared come from? It came from the first terms, x times x, right? So this polynomial right here, this x squared, is I'm going to break that up into 2 factors in these 2 positions. All right, so let's start with, we're going to build our smiling man. Sort of our workspace, okay? All right, and then I'm going to draw my arcs. I'm not going to draw all of the figures, but I just want to kind of draw the arcs. So these are my firsts, my lasts, my inners, and the outers. All right, so these 2 first positions multiply to give me the x squared. So what I'm going to do is put the x squared up here, just to recall that. The 2 terms I'm going to place in the last positions are going to multiply to give me the 16. So these ends give me the first 2 multiplications I'm going to work on. All right, and then when we do the inners and the inner and outer term products, we'll be adding those together to get the middle terms. Remember, we had 4 multiplications, and those 2 in the middle gave us that single term. So that's why they're stacked together down here. And so the 10x is going to come from the positive 10. Let me just write 10x. Is going to come from the sum of 2 like terms. All right, so let's figure this out. So now I have to think, first I'm going to start with the x squared. What multiplies to give me x squared? That should be self-evident. That's x times x. So I am going to start with the easy thing and go x times x. All right, so can you see how those connect with that arc? All right, next is to figure out what 2 numbers multiply to 16. So I'm thinking of factors of 16. Let me write that. Factors of 16. All right, so 1 times 16. 2 times 8. 3 doesn't divide it. 4 goes into it. 4 times 4. And that would be it. So I usually, when I'm trying to think of my list of factors, I kind of go in order with my first number. I think of, of course 1 goes into it. Does 2 divide it? Does 3 divide it? Does 4, 5, 6? I just make my list like that. And eventually I get to a list that ends because I can't go past 4. Obviously 5 doesn't go into it, 6 doesn't go into it, 7 doesn't go into it, 8 does, but we already wrote 8. So I'm just not going to keep going. So whenever I get 2 numbers that are very close together like that, I'm pretty much done with my list. Okay, so one of these combinations is it. Now I do notice that my sum here is positive and the 16 is positive. So that means that I'm only going to use positive numbers, no negatives. All right, also, so I need a sum of 2 numbers that sum to 10. Right, so that's what I'm looking. So let's see what our sums are. If I add these together, I get 17. If I add these together, I get 10. If I add these 2, I get 8. So the one that gives me a sum of 10 is this group here. So the 2 and the 8 is what I'm going to try. So 16 is positive 2 times positive 8. Okay, I'm going to put that plus sign in there to indicate that. Remember, it's always a sum or a difference. We've got to choose a sign. All right, now let's get the inner terms. 2x, 2 times x goes here. Then we multiply the outer terms, 8 times x. And then we add those two like terms together. That gives us the 10x. That does work. So this is the right combination. So I think remember what we did is that we came up with factors of 16, made a whole list of them, and then we added those numbers together to see which ones gave us the sum, which is the middle term. Okay, so our factorization, here it is. Okay, so this factors 2x plus 2 quantity times x plus 8. With enough practice, you get really fast at this and you don't need to put all this detail into it. A lot of it will become mental math, but you have to practice to get there. Otherwise, you'll just stare at it forever. So you've got to just go through it until you get it, right? So let's try another one. All right, this time we'll have a minus in there. So x squared minus 8x plus 12. Okay, I begin with, I'm going to build my smiling man structure. So just a pair of parentheses. I'm going to draw my arcs to connect the first terms, first two positions. Draw an arc to connect the last two positions. So the first two are going to multiply to give me x squared. The second two will multiply to give me 12, positive 12. Okay, and then there's the smile in the chin. So take the inner terms, multiply those together, take the outer terms, multiply those together. They will be like terms and should add to the middle, so it should add to the negative 8x. All right, so we start with the easy thing. What multiplies to x squared? X times x. Notice it connects up with this arc. So these are the first two positions, x times x. Okay, now we're going to think of factors of 12. 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. But now I'm noticing I'm not going to forget there's a negative here. So I'm going to need it. If I'm going to get a negative number, I have to have some negatives in here. However, I do need a positive 12. So that means that these both have to be negative to get a positive 12. So I'm going to put negatives on both of these factors. Okay, so which pair gives me a sum of negative 8? So let's do a sum column. This sums to negative 13. These two sum to negative 8. These two sum to negative 7. So the right pair of factors is this one. Gives us that negative 8 that we need. So we're going to place those in there. It's negative 2, so we write minus 2. Negative 6, so we write minus 6. Let's check our inner term product. So negative 2 times x. X times negative 6. It's negative 6x. Remember, the arcs is always multiplication. The time we add is these two like terms, add them, and they get this negative 8x. That's our check step. All right. Okay, so that is the correct breakdown for our factorization. So this this polynomial factors to x, the quantity x minus 2 times the quantity x minus 6. All right, one more. I'll move it down just a little bit. Last example. X squared plus 4x minus 21. So you can see I'm playing a little bit with the minus sign. Okay, first one was all positives, so everything was positive. Every term, here we have two positive terms, we have a negative, so we had to think about how we were going to get a negative middle term. All right, so what happens when the negative's on the end? Let's take a look. So I'll begin with my smiling man structure. right? Multiplying the first two terms gives me the x squared, and then multiplying the last terms gives me the negative 21. All right, and so it's always easy to break up the very first term, x times x, so I write that. Negative 21, I have to think of ways to break that up so that I get a positive 4x. Remember that the positive 4x comes from the sum of we do the product of the inner terms, we do the product of the outer terms, and then we add those together. That should give us the 4x. All right, so let's take a look at negative 21 and get factors of negative 21. All right, first I just think of a list. 1 times 21, 2 doesn't do it, 3 times 7, and that's pretty much it. All right, now to get a negative 21, I will need to have one number negative when I multiply. So I could do negative 1 times positive 21, or I could do positive, let me just do it like this, positive 1 times negative 21. So one of these, just one of these has to be negative. All right, here with the 3 and the 7, if I make the negative 3, the 3 negative and keep the 7 positive, or switch it, 3 positive and 7 negative. So there's 4 different possibilities. So remember what we do is we check. We want a sum of 4. So let's add these together. This adds to positive 20. This adds to positive 4. The third pair adds up to negative 20. And this adds up to negative 4. We want a positive 4. So this is a positive 4. That means that we're going to use these two numbers. So x minus 3 and x plus 7. It doesn't matter which one you put in which parentheses. You could put plus 7 and then minus 3. You just need them both there. All right, the inner terms multiply to negative 3x. The outer terms multiply to 7 times x, 7x. If we add these two together, they give us a sum of 4x. Okay, so remember this is our check step to verify that we get that matching end term. And so we write our final answer is this product. This is sort of our workspace, x minus 3 and x plus 7. Again, practice these over and over and you can just start to see these two numbers add to 4, these two numbers multiply to negative 21. So you start to see some patterns and it becomes much quicker. So go to it. It's time to practice and let me know if you need any help.